Welcome to the Core Women Podcast, the place for women entrepreneurs, authors, and self-starters looking to build community and gain valuable insights through expert interviews with women at the top of their game. Join your host, podcaster, producer, expert coach, entrepreneur, and author, Dr. Summer Watson, as she aims to inspire and empower you through these candid conversations. Lean in and embrace the journey. It's time to start the show. Here's your host, Dr. Summer Watson.
Welcome back to the Core Women Podcast. Today, I'm excited to welcome a remarkable guest, Krishna Avalon, an expert in subconscious and somatic therapy, an internal family systems practitioner, a PSYCH-K facilitator, and a licensed acupuncturist with over 22 years of experience in having guided more than 30,000 patients to their health and wellness goals. She now specializes in subconscious therapy, IFS, and nervous system healing. In this episode, we'll dive deep into how working with the subconscious and the body can transform healing from inside out and what it really takes to foster lasting personal change. Let's jump right into this and welcome Krishna.
Thank you so much. You were so articulate. I know that's a mouthful with some weird words, so I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Well, I'm a bit familiar being a doctor of clinical psych, so these things are familiar, but there's some new things for me to learn as well. And that's why we have our guests on here so they can share their expertise, their wisdom, their insight. So let's get into this. And before we dive into your professional journey, if you could describe your life to this point in one word, what would that word be and why is that word important?
I'd say healing. And it's important because of the lessons I had to come into this world, having to learn as a spiritual being, and my journey as a practitioner, which was really the first thing in my life I ever trusted 100%, was my path first as an acupuncturist and as a facilitator of healing.
I love that. Plus, I love acupuncture. The first time I actually started getting acupuncture was in Okinawa, Japan. Living there and being able to do that there and just being exposed to alternative methodologies of wellness was really special for me. So I know that must have been a special journey for you, learning that and also being able to offer that to others. And this is where I really want to start. Let's talk about your evolution to the work you are doing today.
Well, first of all, how dreamy for you to receive acupuncture in Okinawa. Like that just sounds so dreamy and peaceful. But yeah, acupuncture was my first love in this life. I got into it before people really knew what it was, when it was still illegal in 13 states. I've been doing it for 22 years. Acupuncture's come a long way in the West since then. And it was the first thing that I ever followed and trusted and never doubted. So it really was my first love in this life. And I have been super blessed to live in many places and be able to start practices and have people to treat. And I think it's just because I love the medicine so much. And if there's anything that I was put here to do, I believe that it's to hold space and facilitate, because it's my most natural way of being.
You mentioned this twice about the first thing you've trusted, and that being acupuncture. Can you dive deeper into that?
Yeah, I feel that growing up, I was never taught to trust myself. I was raised by white Catholic people in the Midwest of the United States, and I'm a brown girl. And it was very much the programming to give and give and give, to receive love and acceptance, to say yes, to never say no. Certainly, I was never taught to like, what do you want? How do you see your life? What does your body tell you? What is your gut saying, right? Like I was never taught to trust myself. So in looking back at my life, being in the wounding that I was without even knowing it, and then finding something that I was like 100% yes about, that was good for me. It was a really big deal because I didn't doubt it. It's a $100,000 program. It was 4 years of master's training. It was an intense program. I was young. A lot of people in my class had to work part-time jobs for many years before they got their practices going. Some of them didn't even end up practicing. And I was able to just go out in the world and like have a lot of people to treat. So, you know, when we have those yeses in life and the path is just like being supported and being like, yes, yes, you know, to me, that was what I was meant to do. And so, yeah, those things in life that we're blessed enough to come by where we do trust it 100%, they usually work out pretty well for us. That
Mhm.
answered your question.
You answered the question, which is
Yeah.
most important, and that is from your subjective lens. So I am also a phenomenologist. So being able to take these stories and understand them from your lens is really important. So thank you for answering that question and being so vulnerable and telling us more about why you put your trust wholly into acupuncture. Now, you've worked with over 30,000 patients in your career. What patterns have you noticed that led you to specialize in subconscious therapy in nervous system healing?
I love that question. Before COVID, I was already really wanting to grow. I had been in practice for 17 years. I wasn't jaded, but I was working hard. I was already in a level, not in an ego way, but I was in my mastery. Like I felt like I could do it really well with a blindfold on. And that's great. And I could have kept doing it, but I also saw that I wanted to serve in like a next level sort of way. And so when COVID hit, like so many of us, and I had to close my clinic for 9 weeks, I knew it was time to pivot. And I had already been hearing about the subconscious mind on podcasts and reading books like Bruce Lipton, and was like, wow, this is the missing piece for me. This is why I hadn't been able to make the changes in my life that everybody else, not everybody, but lots of people seemed like they had such an easy time being able to be successful in life or have healthy relationships or make money or lose weight or whatever it is that I seem to be stuck in. And when you learn that the subconscious mind creates 97% of your life, I became obsessed. And so I had one session of PSYCH-K. That's the modality I was trained in. And I don't love the name at all, but it stands for psychology and kinesiology. It was created by a psychologist. Kinesiology is muscle testing. It's incredibly simple, which is what drew me to it. It was also Bruce Lipton's favorite way. He wrote The Biology of Beliefs, for those who don't know, one of my favorite books, and he's one of my favorite teachers. His favorite way to work with the subconscious. So I looked into it, found there was one woman here in Portland, Oregon doing it. I had a session with her. I honestly did not feel any different. But when pandemic hit, I was like, oh, I wonder if that woman's teaching classes because I knew she taught. And sure enough, she was. And so I took 3 of the 4 levels of training here in this house. I actually ended up buying her house, which is another magical story in itself. She taught here for 12 years and lived here for 25. And she's an incredible human being, but she just wasn't my facilitator. And I think that as a facilitator, when you see and hear people and you have intuition, you're going to help them get to their goals a lot quicker, right? She wasn't my space holder. I didn't feel seen and heard by her. She's amazing and she was my teacher. She just was not my space holder. But I knew I wanted to train in it. So I did the trainings here. My life started changing. But I'd been an acupuncturist for so long, really good at it. It was like getting off of that well-oiled track and going in a new direction. I had to offer some PSYCH-K to my current patients so I could be like, oh, now I can trust it 100%. And what was coming back to me from patients was just so mind-boggling and transformative with like very little effort because PSYCH-K is very simple. You're conscious, so it's not like hypnotherapy. But the beauty and the magic I also feel in PSYCH-K is that you not only get to unattach from stressful or traumatic things, you also get to reprogram and create new programs, which is not something I've come across in other ways of working with the subconscious. So we do balances in PSYCH-K, and there's one that I could do all day, every day with people called the transformation of stress. And that's the one that does help people peacefully unattach from a stress or trauma and go in a new direction. And it's so quick and it's so simple. And then the other main balance I work with is a goal statement where we get to talk about what you want. And then from there, we literally create a new program so that you can have the experience that you want to have. Because if that program does not exist in your subconscious, that creates 97% of your life, you're not going to have it. And you can do things to work with your subconscious on your own, but it does take quite a bit longer. And so for me, having the deep excavating and heavy lifting done, and then doing these other things that I know can reinforce what was just on the PSYCH-K, that was the stuff for me. And so as a practitioner of the healing arts, Usually I go through the lesson, through the wound, through the integration, and then I get to guide other people through it. Like, really, that's the most beautiful, wise, true way, I think, of being able to facilitate others is it's something you've gone through yourself, right?
Absolutely. I think it's important to be able to go through that evolution of what you've been through and what you've used or what methodologies you've used that have helped you work through what it is that you wanted to work through once you recognize what that is. Now, I'm going to take a step back here because we are talking about the subconscious, and you keep stating that it's 97% of where things are stored, our beliefs, our behavior, all these different things. Can you tell the listeners the difference between conscious and subconscious mind?
The way that I've learned it is that the subconscious is where our programs, our habits, our behaviors, our beliefs are stored. And then the conscious mind is like if we were technology, and I don't love explaining it like we're technology, but Bruce Lipton says if we are a computer, the subconscious is the hard drive. You can't run your life without the programs. And then the conscious mind is like the keyboard typing information into the hard drive. You need that conscious mind. It's important. But if you want to make changes and you don't want it to take 20 to 25 years, you can get there much quicker working with the programs in the subconscious.
Yeah.
So if you're a visual person, you can imagine like an iceberg. On the top, you see the top of the iceberg, but then beneath is just like this huge depth, and where most of the iceberg actually really is, it's underneath the surface.
Thank you so much for that comparison. I like that analogy of the iceberg. So little of it is actually above the water, so much of it is below the water. It does make a difference when you're working with your subconscious. And it's interesting because from Freud, really delving into that subconscious, to Adler, one of his students and also a psychiatrist who deviated from Freud, said there's more than the subconscious. There's more than that. There are other variables that lead to behavioral changes and shifts, although not dismissing the subconscious, but let's take into consideration those other factors, right? I'm very much an Adlerian, and I believe that from a holistic perspective, that many things need to be taken into consideration when we're delving into the behavior and the conditioning of a human being, because tapping back into one of the things you said, what we hold on to. And we can hold on to a lot. And that is what I call brain mapping and how we develop those brain maps and what we continue in our thoughts to go back to, because it's so easy to go back to what was developed. And yet, how do we create a roadblock to change those maps? I know that takes a lot of work, and there's so many of us who do this work and do it from different modalities. So I really love hearing about yours. So let's get a little bit deeper into how does internal family systems therapy support emotional and nervous system regulation?
Well, both PSYCH-K and internal family systems are very somatic most of the time, meaning that you are experiencing what you're experiencing in the body, and it's very much related to your emotions and what you're thinking. And so, to your question, how is it related to the nervous system? When in IFS, the language is that we all have parts of us, and then we all have a self energy that is already loving, courageous, brave, kind, compassionate. And the model is to get your parts in relationship with yourself. And the self's already there, it's already heal and hold. It has to be present for you to be able to extend that energy to your parts so that they learn to trust you, and then they can become less extreme in their expression. So parts can be what we call managers, or they can be firefighters, and both the managers and the firefighters are protector parts. And these parts are not bad. The premise is that they're not bad, but like managers get a lot of credit in society. They can be hyper vigilant, critical, perfectionist, overworking, judgmental, but they get shit done. So they get a lot of credit in society, whereas the firefighters are more self-harming. And those could be like spending too much money, drinking, doing drugs, eating, checking out, numbing. But those parts aren't bad. What they have done is they've gone into roles in your system to protect your younger, more vulnerable parts. And that's their job, is to help you survive. And then your more exiled, abandoned parts, like all of these parts are stuck in wounds and they've gone into roles just to help your system survive. But when you have this IFS model to learn how to be with these parts of you that want your attention, everything starts to shift. And so your body and your nervous system can start to relax because these parts of you that have been ignored or alone or dismissed, they have your attention all of a sudden. They get to tell you what they want, what they need, why they're scared. You get to let them know that you're not alone. And that sometimes, as a practitioner, is what will help somebody's 20-year back pain go away. So it's a framework for being with the parts of you that need your attention. And often those parts are uncomfy and we want them to go away. And pharmaceuticals and traditional talk therapy or just talking about it hasn't helped because the part hasn't had the right kind of inquiry and hasn't had you in yourself to be with it. Or like the other practitioner, maybe me, extending my self energy to your system, then my self energy is present. And then it invites your self energy to be more present. And then the parts are like, okay, I might feel safe enough to kind of show you who I am. It's very incredible. Often this work gets people to places that sometimes our parts are not even in a human form. Sometimes they're like light or their sound or their colors or their shapes. You get to see things beyond this physical dimension sometimes. And it's not scary, you know what I mean? And it's not like you have to come back and, integrate some kind of plant medicine or something. It's just you get there by being with yourself.
Yeah.
So it's incredibly somatic, incredibly supportive to the nervous system. It softens things. It allows you to be vulnerable. It allows your vulnerable parts to feel safe. So that changes everything in your body and your nervous system.
Well, that's so important that there are different modalities of thought and practice to help others. And this, of course, would align with a lot of other people in helping them. The next question is interesting and one that I created because core women, the K, is how we kinetically connect. As we move through the world, how does that energy, how do we connect energetically to one another? So in today's fast-paced world, many people struggle with nervous system dysregulation. And you've talked about some of this, but what are some of the early signs of this and how can people begin to address it and more importantly, recognize it to address it?
I love that question. And you had given me a couple minutes before we met today because I was working with a new patient who has incredible dysregulation in her system and has been having panic attacks pretty regularly. And it's because she holds a lot and does a lot and has unhealed trauma and has parts of her that feel alone and lonely, right?
Yeah.
And so she was having some dysregulation just in our inquiry in the beginning, just for acupuncture, not even IFS. And so I just had her pause and take a moment to do a somatic practice that helped her be in her physical body and use her body actually to send the signals to the brain. Like, so when you start to maybe relax the tight shoulders as if it's a block of ice melting into water, what you do is you send signals to your brain then, okay, it's safe right now to relax instead of trying to quiet your mind. But a lot of times you can't quiet that busy, frantic mind. So you can use, oh my God, what is this fast beating heart or this sweaty palms or this rate? So we can use the body actually instead to send the signals up to your brain. And in nervous system language, we call it bottom up processing instead of top down from the brain to body. So to your question, you can start to learn to listen to your body because your body will tell you everything you need to know. And our bodies hold our stories. But a lot of times with trauma and stress, it does not feel safe for people to be in their bodies. And it doesn't feel safe to be present. And so these really gentle somatic practices like melting the block of ice, teach your body and your nervous system one breath at a time how to come out of that fight or flight where you're always looking for danger, gauging for safety and the next problem to fix. And just one breath at a time, learning how to just be okay in this moment. I'm safe, I can relax, I can be in my body. So it's like a toning of a muscle. I always say it's like adding drops of water to a bucket, like you're building up your reserves in that bucket of water so that you have more to draw upon and your nervous system isn't just constantly triggered and reacting.
Being able to recognize those triggers and knowing what's going to trigger the amygdala so that you are not so much in that fight or flight reactive mode. These type of exercises can be so beneficial and so helpful, because when somebody is in that high state of trauma or reactive response mode, they're going to directly go from thinking mind to the reactive mind to the amygdala to a fight or flight response if they don't have some kind of technique to work on. So before they get there, these things are already in practice to be able to keep somebody in a state of well-being.
Yeah.
So thank you for describing some of those visualization processes, because those are so important. I like the whole work from bottom up versus top down. So we have covered so much here today. Oh my goodness, we could go on and on. I have so many questions for you. But as we come to the close of the interview, what advice would you offer someone who feels stuck in their healing journey and doesn't know how to move forward?
This is a common one. So you can practice the feeling instead of trying to figure everything out with your, what's it going to look like in your cerebral conscious, logistical, wants to know everything kind of mind. Practice, how do you want to feel in your life? If you want to feel peaceful, you can practice feeling that, not when you're in a state of crisis. The most influential time for your brain to make changes is first thing in the morning when you're still a little sleepy, in that meditative theta state. And then right before you fall asleep, again, that brain is just in that theta state. Those are the times you can listen to some binaural beats to get you there, maybe. I wouldn't necessarily suggest it in a high triggered state to try and get there, but you can. If you want to make change, if you're feeling stuck, take a couple minutes before you get out of bed, put a hand on your heart before you just jump up to start your day. Be like, how do I want to feel today? Take some breaths into your heart, and you practice feeling what that would feel like as if it's already happened. Or if you've already felt that in your life, you can remember or call upon that time, because your body will and your cells respond to that. You can practice like, what would it smell like? What colors? Where would I be? Am I in nature? I like to pick my favorite place in nature and just practice feeling it. Taking yourself out of the busy thinker mind, coming down into your feeling space in your heart. And you could do that however many times a day, but definitely in the morning and before bed. If nothing else has worked, practice feeling it, but then spend some time breathing into that and practicing connecting with that feeling.
I'm already relaxed just listening to that.
Right.
And I think I want to use that in the morning. I thought, oh, that might be good for my husband and I to do in the morning. So thank you for that tip. Thank you, Krishna, for joining me on the Core Women podcast today.
I loved it so much. Thank you, Sabra.
You're welcome. You can follow Krishna Avalon on Facebook and Instagram, as well as LinkedIn, and at www.krishnaavalon.com.
Thank you for joining us on the Core Women podcast with Dr. Summer Watson. We're so glad you're here and would love to connect more with you. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Core Women, and on Twitter at Core Women 1. For more about Core Women and Dr. Watson, visit corewomen.com. Want more support and resources for amazing women like you? Great! Join Dr. Watson and Jen Fontanilla at the Life, Love, and Money Collective, a Core Women production that aids in understanding the key traits that might be getting in the way of living a life that you are absolutely passionate about. Connect with Summer and Jen and find out more at thelifeloveandmoney.com.